Hello there. Thank you for joining me for the latest edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. On this week's show, we welcome back Cape Breton-Canso MP Mike Kellaway to talk about some of the latest programs that the federal government is offering to various citizens and sectors as a result of COVID-19. We'll also be speaking to the director of the Town of Port Hawkesbury's Finance Department, Aaron McEachern, about how COVID-19 has added to an already difficult year for the town and how that could impact the town's finances and potentially tax rates in the near future. But first, we begin with the latest COVID-19 statistics for Nova Scotia. As of noon on Wednesday, April the 29th, there were 935 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nova Scotia. Of those, roughly 529 have been recovered. However, there were also 28 deaths as a result of COVID-19 here in the province. With so many Nova Scotians still dealing with such incredible difficulties, there are many different people who are being impacted by COVID-19 and by the social distancing protocols that accompany it. So how is the federal government dealing with this? To get a perspective on this, I'm joined now by Cape Breton-Canso MP Mike Kellaway, who will be speaking about everything from student relief to the impact on the tourism and fishing industries here in Nova Scotia. Let's speak to Mr. Kellaway right now. Mike, how are things going up your way? How are you holding up?
Things are well. Very busy, as it is for all of us these days. But a lot of things happening, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of far-reaching and deep measures going out to help Canadians. So it's working with constituents, working with businesses, working with seniors, working with youth, and every sector that you can imagine, 3 levels of government, the 3 First Nations communities that are in the riding, and working with caucus and working with cabinet. So lots happening, and lots going on. And Adam, we take this, and I can't help but think of the past 6 days and what's happened in Nova Scotia with respect to the shooting in Cumberland. But I can say that our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody in Nova Scotia, particularly in Cumberland County, families and the loved ones and the colleagues and just neighbors that have been impacted by this. And so a trying time for many, but again, we respond to sad situations, and in this case, horrific situations, by being there for each other. And that's how we've done it through COVID, and that's how we'll do it here in this crisis as well.
It's been said by more than one person since the tragic events of the last few days that we are all Nova Scotians, and in many ways, we are all Portapique today. I mean, you represent many communities about the size of Portapique and the size of those communities impacted by all of this. So, I mean, this is the sort of thing that must hit home for you as well, personally, as you survey the landscape here.
Yeah, Adam, it does. I certainly feel for everyone, as we all do. And, I married into a police family. My wife's father-in-law was chief of police in Sydney, and the current chief of police is her brother, and we have nieces and nephews in corrections and RCMP and first responders, as many of your viewers do. And, you always value first responders, and we've come to that conclusion even more so during COVID. But, when a situation arises, a horrific situation, a sad situation, an unthinkable situation, like in Cumberland County, it's one that that we are there with them. We are grateful that the first responders are there to tackle the situation in very uncertain times. So, again, my thoughts and prayers go to everyone. And yeah, it impacts us all, and we all are certainly with the families today and forevermore.
Well, we'll certainly be keeping them all in our thoughts and our prayers as we go forward, and we'll look to see just how things go in that regard over the next little while as the police investigation continues. But let's get to some of the topics that we wanted to talk about with you here today, Mike, if we could. And I know that the federal government is continuing to roll out different parts of its aid package to those affected by COVID-19, it struck me that one of the biggest sectors that was touched by government action this week was, in fact, for the students. For a student population, it's been a difficult time for all of them, especially university students, yes, post-secondary, trying to, yes, finish up their degrees, trying to finish up their programs. What can you tell me about what the federal government is offering to them and how they can get access to that?
Yeah, Adam, thanks for the question. So last week we introduced the Canada Summer Jobs Program. And we elongated that program to cover not just the summer, but the fall and winter. And we actually made it more flexible for employers to look at hiring students, full-time, part-time throughout the year, to focus on areas that are important to Nova Scotians and to communities during this time of COVID. So summer jobs and other jobs that may come up during the fall and winter will be focused on, essential skills, working with community, working with vulnerable groups. And so we focused on that particular piece last week, and we're actually going to cover the full wage up to minimum wage for employers. In the past, it's been 50-50, so we're going to fund the entire minimum wage for employers, which is significant. This past week, we made some announcements in and around students again and young people. So a couple of the measures we introduced were around the Canada Serves Corps. So that's providing micro grants to students, Adam, to work in community, to earn a stipend, to be able to use that stipend to gain experience working in community on a particular issue or topic, while at the same time being able to, provide or to receive some income to be able to pay for university lodging and things of that nature. In particular, though, the Canada Emergency Student Benefit is one that's really interesting. So if we look at, the reality on the ground, Adam, is that there may be a lot of students that are not going to be able to find work this summer or this fall. And so we realize that. We also realize that those students need to pay for tuition, pay for lodging, food, books, you name it. So we're going to provide for the months of May right through to August about $1,200, actually to be exact, $1,250 for eligible students who can't find work, who are looking to make ends meet but can't find that summer work, and approximately $1,750 for those students with dependents or dependents that have permanent disabilities. So that's a key thing in terms of not leaving any student behind that can't find work, whether it's through the Canada Summer Jobs, Fall and Winter Program, and to be able to have that money coming in to be able to continue their studies and be able to afford to. And the Canada Student Services Grant in particular is another one I like. So there'd be grants that we provided up to about $5,000 for students' education this fall. And they receive that money as a result of working with organizations in the community that have a specific purpose. In the case of the situation we find ourselves now, it's around COVID-19 and how do we develop programs for seniors and vulnerable populations, whether people are unemployed or underemployed, and how do we work on projects in community for the benefit of community with students leading the charge. So that's another stipend that will provide individuals that chance to gain experience while at the same time getting some money into their bank account so they can continue their education. So these are things that are exceptionally important. They're new, and they're doubling down on the importance of students, the importance of their education, but also the ability to harness their talents for the benefit of community. So those are some new additions. And of course, we're going to double the Canada Student Loan Program, and we're broadening the eligibility for student financial assistance. We're increasing financial supports for Indigenous students, just to name a few. So these are things that have emerged in the past 48 hours that build on the Canada Summer Jobs Grant, and exceptionally important demographic for Canada, exceptionally important demographic for our riding of Cape Breton-Canso, and significant investments. To put it into context, $9 billion was announced on those measures I just mentioned around students, coupled with the millions and millions of dollars into the Canada Summer Jobs Program. So we are listening to what the communities and what our constituents are saying around supporting youth. Another thing I'd like to mention, just if I could diverge just a second from students, but one of the big announcements last week was around the monies that are going to go to RDAs. There are about 6 RDAs across this country. ACOA is one of them, and then you have one for Ontario, Quebec. The West has theirs, and the North has theirs. This $625 million is going to be divvied up between those RDAs to help small and medium-sized enterprises that do not meet the criteria of another fund we announced a couple of weeks ago, and that is the fund that focuses on the $40,000 interest-free loan, but is dependent on having a payroll of $20,000 or more. So we're looking at ways consistently on how do we address getting money out the door to individuals and businesses and community stakeholder groups that need it, while at the same time identifying where those gaps are and trying to quickly triage those. These recommendations that I put forward during caucus meetings come from people in Arishad, come from people in Shedican, come from people in Port Hawkesbury, Sydney, and Canso. And we're really seeing democracy at work here because it's bottom-up recommendations that are coming up for me from the grassroots that I'm passing on, as are other MPs throughout the country, who are having a fundamental impact on policy that is coming out on a daily, not weekly, daily basis. Mm-hmm. We're living in interesting times. It's scary times. It's anxiety-ridden times. And at the same point, I think we're living in a time of innovation here, responding to this crisis, one of economic innovation, but one of social innovation. And we realize, and certainly I realize, that we have much more to do to help Canadians remain intact during this time of crisis. And we're going to continue to work on that consistently. And we're going to continue the formula of reaching out to the municipalities, reaching out to individuals, reaching out to the health sector, the different sectors within our economy, the resource-based sector, the service sector, the tourism sector. So these are again interesting times, but they're times that I'm seeing our community, your community, my community, standing up and providing what the problem areas are, which are essential, but also coming up with solutions. And I think that's a real key thing that I've seen grow in the past 4 weeks like I've never seen in the past 14, 15 years.
Mm. Well, I'm glad you brought up the tourism sector, and I would like to speak to that for just a moment, if we could. Sure. We talked about this the last time that we had you in, and since then, it's been almost a domino effect for seeing summer festivals and events falling by the wayside. A number of them right here in Richmond County and Port Hawkesbury in the General Strait area. So I just wonder now, is there anything being done at the federal level in terms of funding that would normally go to these types of events, and working with stakeholders in the tourism industry to be able to deal with what happens when communities can't be able to welcome people like this?
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a couple of things, Adam. I believe it was last week, but every day seems like the same day in a lot of respects. So I call every day Tuesday, because every day seems like Tuesday. But the federal government did announce through the Ministry of Culture assistance for groups that are putting on events, or we're going to put on events. We're going to put on different type of functions, whether they be entertainment, culture, whatever the case may be. And if individuals are looking for information on that, please call me directly, call my office directly, or email me directly, and we'll get you in contact with the right people to be able to facilitate discussions on that. So that's number one. Number two is discussions that I've had with the Minister of Tourism, which also happens to be the Minister of ACOA, Melanie Joly. And we work very closely with individual tourism operators, talking to them, getting their insights, and also dealing with Terry Smith from Destination Cape Breton on the needs for the small and medium-sized tourism operators, and also now large tourism operators, as to what their needs are what their requirements are. And I believe in the next little bit, very soon, there'll be some announcements made to assist the tourism sector. But I'll go back to the monies that will be infused into the RDAs like ACOA, that I believe that the idea behind that money is to look at how do we focus on small and medium-sized enterprise from an operations perspective. So I think this is another way to capture, I think, some of those elements of groups that relied on events, concerts, what have you, and looking at how do we help them through the ACOA fund, but also how do we look at helping them through the culture fund that has come out. And again, what we'll see here is more efforts to focus and double down on those groups that rely on, the Granville Green Series, for example, or in Canso, the Stan Rogers Festival is a big one that, a lot of people in Richmond County and Inverness County and Victoria County and the CBRM, attend on a yearly basis. So, and they're so important to our economy. They're so important to the multiplier effect of the economy. People just don't come and they just don't listen to the music. They purchase things. They stay overnight. So we understand that more needs to be done on that front. But I think there's pots of monies that are going to assist on that, Adam. But we need to focus on how do we do more to assist those individuals and organizations and community-driven initiatives.
Mike, I wanted to follow up with a question that we had last time around about the lobster fishery, and word coming down a little earlier this week that the lobster fishery is going to proceed in several areas in Inverness and Antigonish counties. Can you give me a sense of how that's going to look in terms of what happens within your riding and in terms of the conversations you've been having with different fishing associations in the LFAs around your riding? How are things going in that regard?
Well, I have to say, and I mean this sincerely, in the past 4 weeks, I've received an education from the fishers of Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia. And I mean that in a positive and constructive way. I've learned a lot, and I want to thank everybody from the harvesters to plant workers to plant owners to owner-operators. In all sincerity, I think we're up to 48 calls with different groups that I've had. Some, multiple calls with the same group, but a significant amount of calls, and they're all meetings that are taking place. So, number one, thank you to Fishers and Richmond County and the Gulf and up to Glace Bay and to Harvey Boucher and to Guysborough County. Thank you so much. I mean that sincerely. It's helped to inform me a great deal. When we look at the changes or the measures that were taken this week by the Minister of Fisheries and DFO, the decision from DFO was to have, within the Gulf, a delay to May 15th. And so that was announced a couple of days ago. And my understanding as of now is that the timelines for other fishing areas will remain the same as it has in the past. So, I'll be honest with you, I've received correspondence suggesting that was the right move to make, and I've certainly received feedback and correspondence that fishers would have preferred, to say the least, that it would remain at May 1st for some of these groups. So what I'm doing and what I've always done and what I'll always do is be honest with people. When I say I am advocating for those that want to fish and for for economic reasons and want to and understand the volatility of the market that is before them. But I also support those individuals, excuse me, that for health reasons and economic reasons would like to see some measures come down from government to enable them to at least have the opportunity to have that choice. And when it comes to, the timelines for the Gulf, I had a great conversation this morning with folks in the Antigonish area that were not pleased, to say the least, around their request of starting May 1st and having it be May 15th. So I meet with groups, I listen to them, I'll pass on their concerns to the minister, And my job in a riding is this big, is to advocate and find the art of the possible for everyone. At times it's not easy. At times it's complex. But at the same point, a riding this speed requires that approach. Because usually there's always two sides to everything. And both are a lot of times of equal value. So I've had conversations with Bernadette Jordan, Minister Jordan, her staff, her senior staff. I've sent at least 2 very detailed letters with recommendations on how I think, and my office thinks, fishers could benefit from certain measures. And my hope is, I know they're being reviewed, and I want to stress they're being reviewed. It doesn't necessarily mean they're being approved. But I can tell you, again, the people of Canso do not have to take a second seat to ingenuity and ideas, especially in the fishery. Some of the recommendations are quite innovative. Some of them have already come to fruition. The SIR benefit, that 16 weeks, is now available to fishers who do not have a job to go to, in the spring here. Now, the SIR is good, Adam. It's 16 weeks. It's $500 a week, $2,000 a month. But the problem with SIR when it comes to seasonal work is that, the fishery in Atlantic Canada and in many ridings is short. It's 12 weeks, some cases a little more, some cases a little less. And so my message to the federal government is, can we look at ways to be innovative of looking at options for EI, or extensions of EI, or other types of measures to assist those folks that for health or economic reasons would prefer to take another path, while at the same time acknowledging that there are many fishers who want to fish, who are willing to take the measures to fish and put the boats and the traps in the water. So the riding is complex, but I'll tell you, I've never been more proud to serve and to be a part of a series of communities that I am now, from the first responders to essential workers, fishers, truck drivers, grocery store attendants, ambulance drivers, paramedics rather, firefighters. It's quite amazing. People that are working in long-term healthcare facilities. My God, Adam. I mean, it's mind-boggling. The hours are people that are working, the risks that they are taking, and they're doing it, in so many cases willingly as a call to arms. I'm blown away by our riding. I'm blown away by the people. I'm blown away by the fact that we are a community that understands that we have challenges before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, but people are digging down deep to say, Mike, here's an idea. Mike, here's a thought to bring up to a minister. Mike, here is a series of recommendations. You couldn't ask for anything more from a people than in Cape Breton Canso.
Well, I wanted to continue on that thread as we start to head into the home stretch of this particular interview, Mike, because the last time we talked, you painted a picture of being on the phone from early in the morning till late into the night from your home there where you're doing most of the business that you're doing. I imagine that's still the case, but what's your sense on how Cape Breton Canso and the individual communities have responded? You mentioned a few people that have really stepped up to the plate, but how do you get the sense that not only individual people, but business owners, charitable organizations, how are people across your riding doing in terms of all of this after a month?
I'm smiling because I've talked to so many of them, and so many I need to talk to. So where do you begin? I'll start with the business community. So there are a number of businesses that are in our riding, that are on our island, that are in our region of northeastern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton, that are stepping up to the plate. And I won't mention them by name because they may not want to be mentioned, but there's a company that's playing a fundamental role in the creation of ventilators along with other companies throughout the world. That's a Cape Breton company. There is another company that is looking at transforming its distillery to a place to create hand sanitizer.
Yes.
There are organizations looking at developing PPE, for not just Cape Bretoners and northeastern Nova Scotians, but for the world. That's fascinating to me. That's amazing to me. They've stepped up to the plate. When I think of local government, I think of the calls I have weekly with Richmond County. And I think of the questions that come from councillors in the warden. I think of, in particular, Brian Marchand, who asks so many great questions that are designed to make us think better, to think more on this topic of what solutions can we provide. I think of the management and the staff of Richmond County, and the same goes for the town of Port Hawkesbury, mayor, council, senior folks, and Inverness with the warden and the CEO, and I think of course, the CBRM and the First Nations community, Chief Wilbur, Chief PJ, Chief Gugu. The connectivity and the willingness to work with each other has never been more prevalent. I think of the Cape Breton Partnership and Carla Arsenault, who is leading the charge and connecting all facets of the Cape Breton economy together. I think of groups in Guysborough County who right now are delivering meals through ethical and health quality and right health measures to seniors in need. And the same goes for Antigonish County in terms of helping those that can't help themselves. I mean, look at the servant leaders in our community. Look at the servant leaders. Look at the word servant. Look at the word leadership. Serving is putting yourself not ahead of everyone else, but behind everyone else, and working from behind and putting people first. That's leadership, folks. That's leadership. So it's fascinating times. I just talked to a teacher in Cape Breton who, along with other teachers, are once again delivering meals to students in need who can't, for a lot of reasons. One, that schools are closed, that are missing meals because of poverty, Adam. And we're stepping up to the plate. I think of the group I met and asked to come together from all parts of the riding last week via Zoom. And I said, I want you to come today to talk to me and listen to me, and then I want to hear from them, which I did. Looking at what I was looking at before COVID, a universal basic income pilot for Cape Breton Council. It's being done through other places in the world. It's being talked about in PEI. It was tried in Ontario, but then a government came in and ended it. The ideas and the passion was amazing. These were predominantly not-for-profit groups who were coming together and saying, let's have this, let's do a deeper dive on a universal basic income. Consequently, CERB is that right now. So I look at organizations like yours, Telile. When the doctor comes on and talks about COVID and where we are and the practices that you need to make, that's leadership on Telile's part to get the message out that we need factual information if we're going to win. If we're going to win this battle, we need to practice. And that the average person who is, staying indoors, who is not risking circumventing social distancing because they care about their mother, they care about their father, their kids, their friends, and their strangers. And this is where you got to put ego aside, and you need to make sacrifices to things that we considered to be normal only eight weeks ago. So for me, I've seen so many. I've seen some. I've seen some the good and the bad, and I've seen some ugly. But the good is far outweighs the bad. It certainly far outweighs the ugly. And I'm really proud of the people of this riding. And it's that spirit that, there is something to living in rural Canada, and there is something about knowing your neighbor, and there is something knowing about helping your neighbor that happened before COVID. And now we're seeing what people will do for their neighbor, what they will do for a stranger. That's amazing, and very proud of all of your viewers for the efforts on practicing social distancing, self-isolation, going to sites that have facts and not to sites that have rumor and innuendo and that are nasty.
Yeah.
So we have to have each other's back. That doesn't mean we don't have to critique government policy, for example. That doesn't mean we don't challenge status quo. That doesn't mean we settle. But it means that we need to be good for each other and to each other.
We appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us here once again. Mike Kellaway, thank you so much for coming back and giving us a hand here on Telile 24/7 once again.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you, and to your listeners and to the staff and Telile. Thank you for what you're doing. It's truly appreciated.
Earlier this week, the provincial government unveiled an aid package for municipalities around Nova Scotia that are having trouble dealing with the fallout from COVID-19 and the resulting lockdown. And we got a sense from local municipalities around the same time that this is going to be a very difficult year for them as they try to put their budgets together for the coming fiscal year. On Monday evening, Richmond County Council held its first regular meeting since February, and it did so by teleconferencing. During that meeting, District 5 Councillor and former Warden Jason McLean warned everybody that was viewing that this could be one of the most difficult periods of number crunching in the run-up to releasing a budget that Richmond Municipal Council has ever faced. Just a couple of days earlier, the town of Port Hawkesbury's finance director, Aaron McEachern, released a statement warning town residents that it could be facing a $600,000 shortfall in the next 6 months. McEachern also pointed out that because of the shutdown of various town facilities, including the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre, the Strait Area Pool, and the Alan J. McEachern Regional Airport in nearby Port Hastings, that the town is not seeing the kind of revenue that it's used to expecting as it puts its budget together. And that, combined with other factors that predate COVID-19, could have a serious impact going forward. So here at Telile 24/7, we decided to speak to Aaron McEachern and talk a little bit more about the challenges facing the town of Port Hawkesbury. I spoke to her by phone on Monday. Let's hear part of that interview right now. I wanted to pick up on a point that you had made a little earlier on regarding flattening assessments in the town of Port Hawkesbury and how that's contributed to the current budgetary issues. I just wonder, are those residential or commercial, or are they a combination of both? Are we looking at difficulty in the housing market locally, or we're looking at this difficulty in the business community? What do you think is contributing to that assessment flattening in Port Hawkesbury?
I'd say a little bit of both. Our residential assessments have been remaining pretty flat. The only growth we've been really seeing, and I think anybody in Port Hawkesbury would know that there's not been a whole lot of new housing builds in the area. But we did see a nice positive trend last year in relation to the number of home sales, which was really positive. I think the number of sales in Port Hawkesbury doubled from the year before, which was something we hadn't seen. So we were really optimistic about that, that impact that could have on our residential market moving forward. This pandemic has kind of, thrown a wrench in that a little bit, but we really were happy to see that, and it was something that was really positive for council and for administrators to see. But the most significant impact from a financial perspective in the assessments has been a bit of a decline in the commercial, and the commercial tax rate is higher than the residential tax rate, so it has a more significant impact. So technically our residential assessments have been remaining flat, which is not great, but we did see some positive trends in that in last year's real estate market. But the commercial assessments have been declining.
On the commercial side as well, I was curious to know if you feel that the current social distancing leading to so many business shutdowns around the town has a potential to impact town coffers as well. I mean, obviously, whether or not businesses are taking customers in or in full operation, they're still going to be paying their assessment to the town, but do you get a sense that that could have a long-term impact on town coffers as well?
It's definitely a concern, and I know every municipality and every business is obviously concerned about the current situation. And, early conversations we've had with assessment folks, this could have a dramatic impact on assessments moving forward, and kind of the market value of properties. But it's really, early days. So no kind of quantification of that impact, but it's something we've been asking those that are involved in the assessment business and providing assessments to, keep us in the loop on. And everybody in Nova Scotia is going to be in the same boat in that regard. So it's not anything unique, I guess, to Port Hawkesbury there.
No, true enough. I wanted to pick up on a point that you'd made as well about the various facilities that Port Hawkesbury operates and just aren't seeing the kind of foot traffic or usage right now simply because of social distancing and the idea that we're all being asked to stay home. Looking at the pool, looking at the Civic Centre and the Alan J. McEachern Regional Airport, I just wonder, is there any savings to be found in the idea that the town is not operating these facilities at full capacity? Would there be any dollars to be found there, or would they be negligible in terms of the overall impact that people just aren't using these facilities?
There's obviously some fixed costs that you don't that don't go away. However, in our analysis, we've looked at that, and unfortunately, we've had to, lay off seasonal employees sooner than we wanted to, and casual, I think we had about 35 layoffs, with casual, part-time, and full-time seasonal folks. And, we've looked at reductions in costs, and particularly power, because the ice plant is something that consumes a lot of power. So with not having ice in April and May, which we typically would, we've accounted for that. So roughly we've accounted for around $200,000 in cost saving, which makes up that kind of net $400,000 amount that we're looking to manage through this budget process.
Now, obviously, you're looking long-term. I mean, you've spoken already about what the impact could be for the town of Port Hawkesbury, looking as much as 5 to 6 months out. And, I mean, your job would be looking up to a year, if not longer, in advance in terms of how the Port Hawkesbury's finances will go. That being said, is there a sense that there could be some short-term difficulties that residents may have to endure for the sake of making up this shortfall? Budgetary talks have already begun within Town Council. Are we looking at a potential tax increase on the residential or commercial side? Are we looking at any potential reductions in services or streamlining of services? What's your sense as to what possibilities are at least in the discussion phase, if not going ahead completely?
We're pausing right now on kind of any non-essential operational spending. Every department has looked within their existing budgets to determine if there's any efficiencies and whatnot without making any significant service level reductions. It's hard to make serious service level reductions when you're looking at what hopefully is a temporary measures that have been put in place that will hopefully turn around and things will go back to whatever normal is after that period of time. But it is a tough year, and I think council, through this process, are seeing that and are looking to be as efficient as possible, and the money that we do spend to make a significant impact, and trying to do kind of more with less. So, looking at projects that may be really positive in the community, but maybe don't have a huge capital cost associated. We do, and council's worked hard over the last number of years to, even in challenging times, to be able to put money aside in an operating reserve, which is your savings account, to be able to, be able to contribute in capital projects and to face kind of challenges as they arise. This pandemic is not really where we wanted to be spending that money. It's been put aside so that we're able to leverage those dollars for infrastructure projects or programs that come down through the federal government. And the Pit Nepean project was a prime example of that. We were able to participate in that program, which we got 75-cent dollars, and that money we're putting aside is to be able to participate in other projects like that. But that money is there, and it's not necessarily earmarked for that, and it can be used to kind of soften the burden, of this pandemic. But we'd obviously rather use mindset for something that's going to have long-term impacts in Port Hawkesbury as opposed to kind of just getting through this tough time. So I know there's some funding programs that are available through the federal and provincial governments that are kind of helping with wage subsidy and keeping operations going. They're not yet available to the towns or government agencies. But, you know, it would be nice if, after the dust settles, if some of those programs may be extended to municipalities like ourselves who kind of do operate like a business in some aspects of the services we provide. So we're looking to, you know, minimize its impact as best we can. But I don't think council or haven't yet talked about making any serious or significant cuts to service levels where this is a short-term, hopefully a short-term situation we're in.
Well, I just want to pick up on the comment you'd made about the capital reserves for the town of Port Hawkesbury, Aaron, and you and I both know it was only as recently as 2015 that Port Hawkesbury's reserve funds were nearly drained, and it seems like the town has done a bit of a better job over the past 5 years in being able to build those back up. So is there any kind of optimism to be taken from that? Just the idea that in 2015 it could have been a lot worse if something like this happened, but it looks like there is at least a bit of a cushion for the town to go to as it tries to deal with the issues that are happening here.
Yeah, no, I think obviously it's important in any business or in any government to ensure you kind of have, you know, that rainy day fund or that those funds that are available and set aside for situations like this. So we're definitely in a better position than we may have been a number of years back, and you know, that's through you know, decision making of council and recognizing you know, how important it is to have some funds available for situations like we're in right now, or for future spending and infrastructure spending within the municipality. So yeah, you know, we're in a reasonably okay position to kind of manage through this situation, but obviously we're going to try to look for any other efficiencies or help we can get to, you know, to be able to be better prepared to participate in leverage infrastructure programs as they come out. Because I'm hoping, you know, and I think we're hearing likely that there will be some sort of infrastructure program come out once we get past these really tough times.
Hopefully so. We've covered a lot of ground here in a short time, Aaron, and I appreciate you giving me some time here. Did you want to add anything else about all of this and about where Port Hawkesbury goes from here just before we wrap up?
Council still has, and staff still have some work to do in order to be able to move forward with a budget, but you know, we're working together well, and yeah, so kind of looking forward to getting past these difficult times, and I'm sure all of your listeners are probably in the same boat. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us today, or with me today, and yeah, that's all I had.
It's our pleasure, Aaron. Thank you for giving us a couple of moments here. We've been speaking to Erin McCackern via phone. She is the Director of Finance for the town of Port Hawkesbury. And that wraps up Telile 24/7 for this week. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and I'd also like to thank our interview subjects for this week, Erin McCackern and Mike Calloway. Special thanks to everybody at Telile Community Television for helping to get this show on the air every week, and in particular I'd like to thank our business manager at Telile, Cora LeBlanc. A reminder that Telile is live streaming the COVID-19 media briefings every day involving Nova Scotia. Those live streams from Halifax are happening every afternoon at 3 o'clock. You can also follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you check out our YouTube channel for Telile Community Television, you will see every single episode of Telile 24/7, as well as the other programs that we've had available there for quite a while now. If you'd like to find out more information about COVID-19, there are several ways to do so. Check out the World Health Organization website. That's who.int. For a Canadian perspective, you can go to canada.ca/coronavirus. You can also call 1-833-784-4397. And you can also go to the Nova Scotia 811 health site to be able to find out more details about COVID-19. If you feel that you have symptoms of COVID-19 yourself, please call 811 and you will be able to get an appointment with the local COVID-19 testing center in your area. Please do not call 911 if such a situation occurs. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I'm Adam Cooke. We will see you very soon with a new episode of Telile 24/7.